All right, thank you. I'm going to turn this over to the moderator, Luisa Uribe.
Thank you all for coming. We want to start with transportation. So it's no mystery that Idaho has been experiencing rapid growth over the last couple of years. Meridian specifically has grown 6.9% over the last year, 30.5% over the last 5 years, and 47.6% over the last 8 years. When asked what issues should the legislature tackle, Meridianites rate congestion mitigation at the top of their list. Senator Den Hartog, let's start with you. Since you're the Senate Transportation Vice Chair, and you also served as the chair last session, and we have so many new people to our area, can you please explain, kind of give us a quick recap on how our state transportation funding works?
Thank you. So all of the gas tax that's collected every time you fill up comes to the state, and that gets distributed through a distribution formula to the local highway jurisdictions. So we have it gets divided between the state and the locals. We have done a lot of work, and then the registration fees here in Ada County and your local property taxes. Ada County Highway District has the ability to levy property taxes. Not all highway districts do. They're a consolidated district, and so they have that ability based on when they were created. All of those get used for the construction and maintenance of roadways. Over the last several years, many of us, the last 3 or 4 years, we've done a ton of work in doing something that had never been done before in Idaho, and that is using general fund tax revenue, so sales and income tax revenue, to go towards transportation. We've made a push to do that over the last several years in an effort to not increase gas tax and registration fees. We've done that through a couple of different programs, and then these last 2 years, we saw last year the governor had proposed and the legislature passed significant one-time investments in local bridge construction and some maintenance funding that was general fund from the surplus. And the governor has proposed to do that again this year, another $200 million to local bridges and maintenance, and that will go out through the distribution formula, and some of it will go through a competitive process through a different entity. And then those programs, those bridges will get packaged and constructed across the state. So we've made some huge investments. We haven't moved, that legislation hasn't moved yet. It's a proposed transfer, so we have to do all of our budget setting first to see how everything else shakes out.
Thank you. Recently, our legislature has focused on improving our state highway system, but most of our roads in our state are local. What changes could the legislature propose to the local governments, like the city of Meridian, to improve their local infrastructure? Anybody wants to take that one? No.
Dominate some other questions too, so I don't want to necessarily dominate this, but I think some of the things that Senator and Hartog, sorry, it's hard to refer to each other a little bit more informally oftentimes, so we apologize sometimes we say Lori. I think what Lori was already talking about was some of the general fund money that we dedicated towards that. It started off being a small amount to the local governments. I think when we first put it into place, there was about $8 million is all they were getting. It's already over $30 million with that, and we'll go up to 50 here by the end of this year, I think. And so we're a significant amount of the money that was from the general fund money is going into that. And that's just the increase that I'm talking about, not necessarily what else is going on. One thing that I'd like to point out to people, and I know people are frustrated with driving these roads, I am just as much as you are. Right now, it is not a money problem. I know that doesn't sound right. It's like, wow, you're not spending enough. Right now, we can't get enough contractors to do the projects. We have dedicated so much money in the last several years to our construction of roads, whether it's local or state, that it is not a money problem right now. We have put in so much money over the last several years, thanks really in part to Senator Den Hartog and the work that she has done along with Representative Palmer. it's not a money problem right now. It's purely a labor problem of just getting the money spent.
So is there any discussion happening as to how we can improve that problem? How we can, bring people contracts from other places or provide incentives for labor?
I'll love to talk on that. I know Joan's itching to talk on that. What do we have enough employees for right now? We don't have enough employees for anything. Whether it's serving at McDonald's, or it's employees at putting construction projects together, or installing window coverings. We can't find enough labor for that right now. That's a problem that we are experiencing when we have our great market that we have with the growth. That's going to happen. You got to give markets time to catch up on that. But I would love to hear Representative Vanderbilt talk about that.
Well, I think the one thing we are running into is the labor participation rate, which has used to be right around 70%, and now it's like 61, 62%. So of the labor force, we don't have enough people that want to work. And I don't know if it's because we provide free Medicaid to the able-bodied adults that no longer feel like they have to work, or if they go to work, they come out even compared to losing their medical benefits, or if it's government subsidies or unemployment, I think runs way too long of a period of time. I think there's some driving forces in the labor force that we have incentivized people to not look for work. I think it's starting to change. I've talked to my son who has several businesses, and he says, I'm finally getting more qualified people, or people who are now eager to go to work. And I think that's kind of the result of COVID. A lot of people have stayed home, and so getting enough people to work. I know a neighbor down the road has a paving business, and he's so frustrated with not being able to find people to work that he would just soon sell the business and call it quits, because he says, I'm just tired of trying to find people that will help me in the business. And so I think that's the same thing we're going to run into with roads, is trying to find people that actually want to go to work. And what all the instances are that keeps them from work, I don't know. We can only guess until we start finding the people that say, yeah, I could work, but I don't want to.
So we have a lot of money, we don't have roads, and the roads are not enough for the amount of population we have right now, and we don't have people who are willing to build them. What about public transportation? That's a topic that has come up in the past, and some people propose that maybe the state should invest in it or help the cities invest in public transportation. Do any of you support an investment in public transportation, in buses?
I can talk about that. With my experience on council, we had this conversation quite a bit over the years, and honestly, when it comes to public transportation and the city of Meridian, density is, we just don't have enough density for that to happen. Until there's more desire, until there's more ridership on these buses and more density to fill the buses, I think that we may, I know Matt Stahl's here from Compass, and we talk, there's a lot of planning that goes out, 10, 15, 20 years regarding transportation and growth and what that looks like, planning going forward. Right now we're in the planning phase. We just need more density to justify the cost, in my opinion.
If I might add to that, I sat where the gentleman from Utah was, and everybody thinks Utah did a great job of mass transit downtown, and he said the only way we could get enough ridership is if we gave it for free. When they were charging, they couldn't get enough people on the ridership to make it work, and so I guess if you offer enough for free, enough people will show up.
Representative Betsky, you had
I would just add that the reason that you have to have that kind of ridership to make it work is the initial investment in something like that, like a train system or some other kind of mass transit system, is so massive that in order to get an ROI on that, you have to have a large population. And we're just not quite there yet. We're kind of like in the middle. We're just big enough that we have problems with our roads and problems with congestion because we're spread out and there's enough people to cause traffic, but we're not big enough yet where we would be at the point where a public transit system would have a positive ROI. So something to look forward to in the future, but the ROI has to be there in order to justify it because of the huge initial investment.
I'd just like to jump in on that a little bit. We'll never have that ROI. I'm just being honest with you. We are too spread out in the West for these things to work. I was talking to the engineers who helped develop the collection system for Seattle's mass transit systems. It costs more money to collect the money than it does to allow the thing for the maintenance on it. They will never collect enough. Just the cost to collect it is more than they can get out of the system. It doesn't work. And if you're in New York and you've got 2 billion people sitting on top of each other, great, it'll work there, but it's not going to work here, and I think we should stop pretending that it does. There is one system that works great when you want to talk about that, and that's commuter ride. It's actually a system that pays for itself, it works, it is the only thing that is actually a profitable way of providing mass transit, and we do that here, and it does a great job. But other than that, go down to Boise and watch those buses sit empty all day long driving around in circles. We're too spread out. The West is different than back east, and I wish we'd stop pretending that we're back east and looking at those systems. It doesn't even pay for itself in Seattle.
Thank you. Next question. With increasing pedestrians and bicycle accidents, some resulting in deaths, what can the legislature do to address transportation safety in the Treasure Valley?
I'll jump in first. We've done a lot. Again, sometimes this isn't always a matter, sometimes it's a matter of money and sometimes it's not. Last year, I'm trying to recall the dollar amount this year, the proposal is for $10 million just for local pedestrian projects. And again, those will be filtered out through ITD to the local, through the state transportation department to the local highway districts to make sure that those projects can get completed. We have done a lot of pedestrian projects funded by the state level. And then again, this is a little bit of an unusual time. We haven't seen that previously. Previously it was the locals raising their own funds to do these types of projects. They're struggling just like a lot of communities on the property tax side, not wanting to raise property taxes, but still having needs in their communities that they need to meet. Because of the current system that or the current situation that we find ourselves in with these really strong revenues at the state level, a lot of which has been driven by the federal influx of money into our state, where we're seeing increased sales tax collections as people have been spending the funds that the state had, that the federal government had sent out during the pandemic, and all the money that was coming into the state from the federal government. We're gonna see a change. We don't quite know when that's gonna happen or how much the decrease is going to be, but so we've been sending money out from the state level for pedestrian projects in particular.
You have something to add?
Just, I have something to add on that. I think one thing that I've always been super passionate about is safe routes to school for kiddos. I think that we've had a lot of accidents, not actually a lot, but we've had a handful of accidents as of late where students have been ran over by cars, and it's just been, it's a travesty. It's just an awful thing when that happens, and I think that I think that we need to pay a little bit more attention to safe routes to schools and make sure that our kiddos are taken care of when they're walking to school, driving to school, riding their bikes to school. I think it's really important.
Representative Holtzclaw?
Hello. All right. So, yeah, this $10 million from the general funds for the local projects, that's a start. But I can't tell you how many times in the morning that I jump out of my car and see kids trying to cross the street going from across Locust Grove, and like physically have to jump out of my car and just put up my hand and like stop. And this is right down the road where 2 little kids got killed. It's enough of that. It really is. We need to invest in that. And I think, having a sidewalk and then nothing, and then a sidewalk and nothing, let's have some continuity in that safe routes to school, because, that's important. I do want to say one thing about these projects. Yeah, we're all competing for the same money for the road projects. But just keep in mind, $33 trillion, so that's about how much we owe, last I looked, according to the national budget. So all this free money, COVID money, just money after money after money, well, we're just swimming in the money, which kind of we are. One of these days we gotta pay it back, and if it's not you, it's gonna be your kids, your grandkids. So let's keep that in mind every chance you get.
Thank you. So we're a little bit over a quarter of our time done. So I have a few questions from the audience that I wanted to put in here. Can anybody comment on the legislation that was just proposed that impacts ACHD and elections? Senator Din Hartog?
You know what, Representative Palmer is going to pay for not being here tonight. I don't know that much. I visited with Representative Palmer about it this morning. There was a piece of legislation introduced. So right now we have 5 highway district commissioners for Ada County Highway District, for that consolidated highway district. The proposal is to go to 7 and to change the cycle of their elections. I don't know where that's going to go this session or how far he intends to push it. That's about as much as I know about the proposal, so I'm happy if anyone else. It was on the House side, so I may have missed some of the conversations.
Yeah, we haven't had it in committee yet. I know it was introduced, but I'm sure we'll be seeing it soon. Yeah.
Okay, next question. As more electric vehicles are using the highways, how will they pay for using the roads?
Go ahead again, thank you. So this was another one that we looked at. So right now, electric vehicles pay an additional fee when they register, and it's $140. So on top of the regular registration fee, they pay this additional fee. We put that in place in 2015, I believe, somewhere roughly in that neighborhood. And there's been a lot of talk about, do we do something like a vehicle miles travel tax, something to capture, the loss of gas tax revenue for something like an electric vehicle. So I had introduced a piece of legislation this year, looking at our neighbors to the south in Utah. A couple of years ago, they had instituted a voluntary program where folks with an electric vehicle could sign up and say, yeah, we'll get our mileage tracked and we'll pay a penny per mile up to, and their extra registration fee right now is about $130. We got some information back from, I'm not moving forward on that legislation because similar to your public transit situation, the folks at ITD visited with the folks in Utah who are running the program, and right now the vehicles are traveling less than the cap, so they're not paying up to the $130. And the cost to run that program with the contractors is $42,000 a month. So it is not, it's not paying for Utah to operate this program yet. There may be a tipping point and a time when we look at that in the future. So I think there's gonna come a day when we hit a point where we're gonna have to look at something different. But at least as I was looking at it and with what Utah was doing, what they had started, it doesn't make sense for us to do it right now.
Okay, this is going quick. Time is going quicker than I expected, so.
I'll add one thing real
Okay.
quick. There was a piece of legislation proposed on the House side this year to make truckers, electric truckers, pay an equivalent fee. It would actually require them to install a meter. The city of Boise has, I think it's about a dozen recycling trucks that are electric now, and of course they don't pay an equivalent share. So there was a piece of legislation proposed to deal with those heavy-duty usage situations that they're currently not paying for. Unfortunately, that did not go anywhere. There was a group that came out and opposed it. I don't know the details of why, but it was withdrawn. So hopefully that comes back at some point.
Okay, 2 more questions, and let's call it like lightning round before we move on to taxes. If we have a labor shortage, why can one road project be finished before another one starts? Traffic is a nightmare, and we're trying to get home after work. Representative Vanderwater?
Yeah, well, most of that, what we run into is ACHD. And I run into the same problem. You take a detour to a detour to a detour, and you think, well, if you're gonna detour traffic off of Amity or off of Lake Hazel, why would you then put one on the road that you detoured everybody to? I don't seem to think that there's a lot of planning, but the other problem I really think they run into is the time frame of when you can do it. And, you know, if you're gonna replace a bridge over a canal, that has to be done before irrigation water comes on. And then if you're gonna do construction, it has to be done in time before winter. And so everybody kind of lines up whatever project they want, and it's almost, I don't think it's impossible, but it seems to be impossible to not run into 2 or 3 detours as you try to get across town.
Regarding vehicle miles traveled, what can the legislature do to reduce VMT across the state and the cities?
Ride a bike? Is vehicles,
Vehicle miles traveled.
travel, yeah. Scooter?
Okay.
I can tell you the first time I had to drive to work is when I got in the legislature. So it's actually the legislature's to blame for my extra vehicles driving.
Okay, and last question. Standards, ANSI, NFPA, EG are changing rapidly with short notice. Is there a fast-track pipeline for getting state authorities or legislators up to speed?
You understand the question? Yeah, I've got a question on that. Okay.
I did
Right.
either.
And talk to the person who wrote the question. He was talking about, is there a way for legislators to get up to speed on the changing industry standards, like ANSI standards, before we write legislation? If we don't understand the question, we'll move on, and we will be making an appointment with one of you, with the constituent, okay?
Okay, let's move on to taxes then. So, according to the Idaho Constitution, any bill that increases taxes has to start in the House.
Error.
Error.
Doesn't say that.
What does it say?
It says generate taxes, and there's a significant
Generates
difference.
taxes.
Generate increase.
Has to start in the House. So, you, Representative Monks, are the chairman of the House Revenue and Taxation Committee. There have been 3 bills that kind of stand out about mitigating property taxes, providing what many call real property tax relief, which should be substantial and ongoing. Number 1 would be the House proposal, which is actually yours. Number 2 is the Senate proposal, which was Senator Scott Groves. And I think there's a 3rd one that is Representative Scott, that proposes to index the property tax exemptions, correct? So, Representative Monks, could you please talk to us a little bit about your bill? And maybe I was hoping one of the 2 senators could talk to us about Senator Scott Groves' bill.
Love to take this subject. There's a lot of background that I probably would love to spend the next 15-20 minutes discussing to make sure we get an understanding. That question presumes a lot of things and leaves out a lot of things that I really think are really important to want to understand the process. We put bills out in the House side so that people could see that we're doing something and that it's not just being ignored. Since we had put those out, which was over a month ago, every day, hours every day, we've been working with members within my own committee, my own caucus, as well as members of the Senate to try to come up with a solution. What we don't want to have happen is us send over bills to the Senate either kill them or the Senate amend it, send it back, we kill them. The idea is to have a bill that we can all agree upon when we get to that point. That's what we've been working on for the last well, since the beginning of this session. Grove had his idea, I had my idea, Scoggin had ideas. It was best just to put the ideas out there so that people see that we're actually working on something. The reality is, I can talk to you all about my bill, but it's not going to be the bill that's going to get done, and neither is Scott Grove's bill is going to be the one that's going to get done as far as across the floor. I can tell you about what we're working on, and that's probably the best way of addressing that, so that you understand what we're doing. And we try to look at all the ideas, and there's a lot of them, of how best to provide property tax relief. In order to provide property tax relief, you need to understand there's only two things we can do to reduce property taxes. There's two, and there's no other ways of doing this. One, the budgets have to be cut. That's it. They have to be cut. Now, what budgets am I talking about? There's essentially three parts of property tax. One of them is from the city's side, that's about 30% of your budget, your budget statewide. That varies some communities. About 30% comes from the counties, and about 30% comes from school bonds and elections. Those are things that the voters have voted for. We put in place a cap on the budgets for the cities and counties with House Bill 389. Much to the chagrin of some cities and counties, they hate it, but we capped them. They can only grow so fast. So then how do we reduce taxes? There's only one other way to reduce taxes, and that's somebody else pays for it. For your property tax to go down, somebody else or something else is going to pay for it. So how do we do that? And we all want property tax relief. So we can shift it to somebody else completely, right? Somebody else can pay for it. We'll just you're a homeowner, you house, I want my neighbor to pay for it, I want the business across the street to pay for it, I want somebody else to pay for it. We can take money then from the state, which is basically somebody else's money, and we can put it into that formula and help reduce it. That's what we're going to choose to do. We're not going to shift it to anybody else, but we're going to take existing funds that we have in the state, where I believe we've got some overtaxation. And again, I'll talk about history of taxes if you want a little bit later, but I won't bore you with that part of it because we've done fantastic work on our taxes over the last number of years. But we are planning, and I think this is kind of the leading idea that we've discussed and that is somewhat agreed upon. I don't want to say it's a done deal, but I think it's a done deal. It's close to where we're going to take approximately $300 million worth of state money and push it into your property tax. And again, I can't say this enough. The state collects 0 property tax dollars. The state spends $0 in property tax. We're state legislators. And again, we don't tax it, we don't collect it. But there's been such an outcry from people to help lower their property taxes that we're willing to address it. So we're taking these dollars that have come from sales tax, some from income tax, because those are the taxes we collect, and we're gonna funnel those down to reduce your taxes. So what will that mean to you? It'll mean you'll see probably a 10 to 15% reduction in your property taxes, which will be the largest reduction in property taxes in the history of Idaho. That's what we're looking to do. There's a lot of details associated with how that works and ways to do that. I could spend the next half hour talking about that, but I just want to let you know that one thing that I get frustrated about is usually it comes from our friends on the other side of the aisle, and it usually comes from the media that will claim they're not doing anything. Nobody's doing anything. Well, that's because you don't want to report on it, and when they don't report on it, our constituents don't see that we're doing anything, and that's very frustrating to hear that, well, you're not doing anything, or you're waiting till the last week to get it done. Well, we've been working for 3 months to get it done. We have a very short window of time. In 3 months, that's it, to get things done, and sometimes it takes that long to get 105 representatives and senators to agree on an issue and a governor to agree on an issue. The fact that we actually do get things done in that time is a miracle, actually. To be able to do something. So, I mean, I can go spend more time on specific details, but I don't want to dominate the time here, and I'm happy to spend more time on ways in which we're looking to funnel that money back to you guys. That's the bottom line.
If we have more time, we'll come back. And Representative Ehlers?
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit to that, since I think it's such an important issue, and address what some of the things Representative Monks has said. First of all, I'm aware of the framework of this property tax relief deal, And I think it's a really good framework and one that I support and that I get behind. That's going to provide real, meaningful, ongoing property tax relief to all taxpayers. And one of the things he mentioned is Representative Monks has been working really hard behind the scenes for a long time, and that's not in the cameras and that doesn't make headlines, but it's really working to provide the best property tax relief that we can get. And there's been some frustration and a little bit of impatience on that. But the way I look at it is, you know, we could have come out of the gates in January and just taken maybe the $100 million of property tax relief that the governor offered. But by putting in the hard work and working for a little bit longer, that number's gotten up to, I think, about $300 million. So 3 times the amount of property tax relief. And you're gonna see it the same on your next property taxes. So whether it happened in January or March, right? It's still going to affect you the same. So I think it's worthwhile and appreciate the patience as, you know, others have been working on and framing this deal so that we can get real meaningful relief.
Thank you.
Senator Trey Byrne, maybe with your time in the city, do you see this problem the same way Senator or Representative Monks does, or do you think the legislature could do more than just telling the cities to cut their budget?
Well, I mean,
I'm listening for this one.
I didn't come here to pick a fight, but what I did do is this was everyone's. It was my number 1 priority coming into this session, and I've been one of those that Representative Ayers talked about who was getting a little impatient with. I didn't want this deal to go down, you know, 3 or 4 days prior to Sunny Die and just, you know, pass something just for kicks and giggles. And so I'm really grateful for leadership on both in the Senate and the House and those who have been involved with these discussions. And I can't wait to see. I know grumblings. I sit on one of my responsibilities is local government tax in the Senate, so I've heard grumblings. I know what Senator Grove's bill looks like. So, but there's one thing that I want to say. So I guess stay tuned, watch the news, you know, email us, pay attention. Looks like something's going to come out here within a week or two. So that's nice. But one thing I have to say is that, you know, the state doesn't collect property taxes. That's right. Representative Monk said, I completely agree. But what they do is they create the mechanism. The state creates the mechanism in which we collect property taxes, and that's where that's where the debate sometimes comes from and what that looks like. So it's tough. We can't just totally you know, say it's the locals' fault all the time for spending too much money. I mean, sometimes we're as a local, we're bound by the mechanism that we're given by the state. And so that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much, Representative Monks. Thank you, all those who are involved. Hopefully we can get something done.
Thank you.
Can I just add something on that? I think, and gosh, I just want to say Trey. Sorry, what he brought up I think was really important for us to understand here. And you know, cities have a job that provides services that everybody's wanting. And all those questions that we were talking about at the very beginning, we're all talking about transportation, right? All these, that's big, obviously an important topic. That was I don't want to say number 1 topic, but it was obviously a topic that everybody wanted to hear anything about. Well, you want roads, you want safe routes, it costs money. And some of that money comes directly from the locals. As far as there's levies that you have that you're paying for that. That's your property tax. So and remember, all these school bonds that go across there, that raises your property tax. So we can't yell at our cities and our counties when we go turn around and vote for a whole bunch of bonds and levies to increase our property taxes and then yell at the legislature for not lowering your property tax. There's a big one coming up in Meridian. I think it used to be that I think it was Eastern Idaho was proposing the largest new bond or levy in the state's history, and it was $250 million, and we all gasped at that. Well, Meridian didn't want to be outdone. I shouldn't say Meridian, West Ada, I apologize. They changed their, West Ada did not want to be outdone, so they're going to run one for $500 million. Don't complain about your property taxes when we get 2/3 of the population to go out and vote to raise your property taxes. And so you're asking for services, we're trying to get you those services, but we're also, it's difficult to try to point to the city and say it's the city's fault, or the county is the county's fault. I think Ada County did a fantastic job this last budget cycle. I think they were able to lower their amount that they were charging on that. But, you know, there's some things that just cost money. Growth costs money, and that's just the nature of where we're at.
Sorry.
Thank you. I'm gonna ask a question from the audience. Do you think that taxing entities will see the property tax savings provided by the state as a justification for raising their taxes? For example, the school districts. So do you think if the school districts see that the legislature is giving people tax breaks, are they going to in turn raise their taxes knowing that people are able to pay more?
That's very well possible. I mean, how often don't you see a school bond saying, hey, it won't cost you anything because we're just renewing the assessment we now have. And so they're pretending like they're not raising your taxes, where actually your taxes would go down if it expired, right? And so you will see quite often, and if Meridian passes the $500 million bond, and we lower our taxes, you may not see any difference in your tax bill because it may just be. Now, I don't say that they're going to justify raising their taxes because we lowered it, but what I'm saying is that you may not see the decrease that we are hoping for just because it's added on. And when, you know, I came back in the legislature during the downturn where the state lost about 2/3 of its income. And I looked at the counties and the city's budget when the state had to cut theirs way back to make ends meet, pull in all their reserves and make it all work. And most of the counties and the cities didn't lower their budgets at all. And so, because they had the ability to collect according to whatever they decided the need is, the state does not have that ability. The state has to look at what their revenue has and then set their budget. The counties look at what their budget is and then set the levy rate. And so it is into managing what your expenses are. And when some of the counties don't take their increase that they are allowed, and then allow somebody else comes in and takes all the foregone taxes, and that raises your taxes a whole bunch all at once when you maybe went 3 years with small increases, and all of a sudden they say, hey, I can go back, take all these back foregone taxes and raise it back up again, and that's when you'll see the real big increases. When we propose that the budgets can't be increased more than 3% or 8% or whatever percent you pick, but if they offset those and don't take them for 3 years, and then they go for a 12% increase. And that's part of the problem that we run into on budgeting.
Your question is if we lower taxes, can they be raised back up? Yeah, there's nothing we can do if you want us to reduce your property taxes to reduce that pressure. So right now there's a lot of pressure on cities, counties, even school districts to be able to get a bond passed right now because everybody's complaining about property taxes, right? So that pressure is there right now. And whether it's Meridian or CUNA or Boise or anybody else, they're feeling a little bit more pressure right now to keep their taxes, their budgets down. No matter how I reduce the taxes, that pressure is going to be alleviated a little bit. And will they then take the maximum amount increase on their budgets? Maybe. Whether we put the money towards paying bond levy debt indebtedness, will that take off pressure then for even the cities and the counties? Yeah, that's just going to happen. If we cut your taxes a lot, the next bond that comes by, you're going to go, that's not too bad. My only $1,000 now instead of $2,000. I can vote for this for the kids. That's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do to prevent that, except for one thing that I'm going to tell you about. Part of one of the proposals, and that was the proposal we had, and it will be part of the property tax relief package, is that we are taking the property tax relief money and we're applying it to the districts directly and forcing the districts to use that money to pay the bond indebtedness. and to pay levies, indebtedness. And so it will just be distributed across the state evenly and fairly. But what we would like to put into place, and we don't have enough money, is that money that goes through this formula, it will allow the districts to bond against that money. So we're gonna provide the money. That's where we want to get. It won't happen this year, it won't be in this bill. But we're hoping if we're able to stick some more money into that formula, that we'll actually have a mechanism in place for them to bond against that money instead of going to the taxpayers. Once we have that in place, we can remove the ability for them to go bond. That will be permanent to where they can't come back and ask for more and more. I can't do it in 1 year. If I had an extra, I need about $450 million ongoing in order to do that. We don't have that right now that I can put towards this particular program. And so when we can get that, that's where we can permanently make sure that that's done, and then that will help provide it. But will that then allow cities and counties or to have less pressure on them to raise theirs to maximum? Yes. But the good thing that we did, we put in caps to minimize how much they can increase. And one thing, and I don't mean to criticize, but I'm going to clarify to John, that foregone balances that he's talking about, they can only take 1% a year on that. So if they had 5%, that was part of House Bill 389. So yes, they can still do their foregone, but they can't take it all in 1 year. So they can only take up to 1% of that every year. So they can take their 3% plus they can take a foregone and get it to 4% plus they can have new construction, which can get them up to, so it's 8 the max, and then you can get the 1% for the foregone, so you can get up to a 9% increase in budget in 1 year period of time. But that's, it's typically set at 3 unless there's a lot of new construction. So that in and of itself will limit the growth on the cities and counties, much to their chagrin. And it's painful for some of them. It's really difficult what that caps has done to certain size cities. But that's things that we have done to try to make sure that we're not adding to the problem.
Okay, we have about 10 minutes left. I have one more topic on taxes, but after that, I'm going to ask you each to share 2 pieces of legislation that you're working on or that you're interested in during this session that you want to highlight. So last topic is going to be grocery tax. Idaho is one of 13 states that still have grocery taxes. We pay 6% on our food. We do have a tax credit that is given to citizens at the end of the year, right? $120 a person or $140 for seniors, which is about $2,000 per year or $167 a month per person. Would this be a good form of tax relief for Idahoans? Why or why not? And is there any legislation currently that has been put forth or that you know of that is coming this session?
All right, it's a good question on grocery tax. One of the challenges is we want to make sure we're actually not raising your taxes by eliminating the grocery tax and just giving a tax break to visitors or tourists or travelers. And that's one of the things that you would lose out on. I've heard that the number is around $100 million or so from out-of-state tax money that we're receiving through this. And so if we completely do away with the grocery tax, we would lose that. Additionally, one of the concerns, so just some of the numbers Louisa mentioned, if you're a family of 4 right now, if you spend less than $667 a month on groceries, you're actually better off tax-wise with a credit than if we repealed it right now. You would end up paying more in taxes. And so that's a concern to me. I don't want to raise anybody's taxes. Maybe there's a couple other mechanisms to do that. I've looked or considered raising the exemption, the credit, not the exemption, to keep up with inflation. I think that's something that would be fair and something that would be helpful. But those are some of the factors I consider when I look at this issue.
Do you have a legislation this year?
I don't think there's anything in bill form right now this year, or at least not that I've seen that's come this year. That's anybody else is aware.
I've always been in favor of repealing the grocery tax. I think it's un-Republican that we collect the tax and then send the check back. Why do we collect the tax in the first place if we're gonna send everybody a tax credit back? I remember the first few years I was in with Senator Fulcher and Representative Bayer, we got the first increase in grocery tax credit, and they says if you just increase it a little bit, then maybe later we can start repealing it. And then we increased it again, and then now it's still never enough. If they're getting more money back than what they're paying, then why are we collecting it in the first place? And we give money back to anybody that shops in Oregon along the Idaho, Oregon, and Washington border, which doesn't tax groceries. We're still giving them a grocery tax, and they're not paying anything. So they're actually coming out even way ahead. And we have all of our border states, almost all of them, don't collect tax on groceries. If we go, I just don't see that our visitors are buying groceries. Most of them are probably eating at restaurants and stuff like that. And we're still collecting taxes on them when they go to the restaurants. And to me, it makes absolutely no sense that we're taxing groceries. And I think it's detrimental to the lower income people, much more so than the higher income people that we tax groceries. And so I've always been in favor of repealing. I just think it's un-Republican to collect a tax and then give it back to you, saying we know you paid taxes and now we're going to give you money back. And now if you're giving me back more than what I paid, that's even worse. So.
How many years has the legislature been working on this issue? Does anybody know? It seems like
This is my 15th year, and I think I've probably been here the longest, and I think they've been talking about that ever since my first or second year in, when I first got in. And like I said, Senator Fulcher and Representative Bayer were my seatmates at that time, and they were fighting to get rid of it then. And we've had a governor that has promised he would try to get rid of the grocery tax, and I haven't seen any help there either.
I'll answer the question. I have no problems repealing the grocery tax. I just, for at the end of the day, I just want to do what's best for Idahoans and what saves Idahoans the most money. And if that's repealing the grocery tax, then that's what we do. That's it.
Thank you. So we have 5 more minutes. Let's go around and let's start with, well, Val wants me to ask one last question about transportation. Is there something the legislature can do to mitigate I-84 freeway noise within the city limits? I would think this is more like a city issue.
There isn't anything specifically that the legislature can do. When you start seeing the sound walls, there's a certain threshold of how close it's housing, how close housing is to the interstate, and it's a federal requirement when the sound walls have to go up. And so outside of that, I think you see it at different communities. They'll require different berming or landscaping requirements to try to mitigate the noise, but in terms of when it's required, that's a federal requirement.
Thank you. Okay, Representative Healy, talk to us about a couple bills that you're working on this session or that you're following that you think should be highlighted.
So I've been extremely quiet tonight because I lean on all of these people. So I spend most of my life in health and welfare with Chairman Bowder, and so I spend most of my life asking everybody all the tax questions and doing my own reading separately. So I didn't have a lot of good answers. Let's see, so a couple of legislation pieces. Let's see, I feel like I'm running about 8 pieces, but I think for me, a lot of it's bringing healthcare people into Idaho and helping with rural providers. We've done some stuff bringing rural providers to Idaho and helping get rid of some burdens on some certifications, etc. Just some unneeded burdens on healthcare this year has been my main focus.
Thank you. Representative Holtzclaw?
Thank you. So I think Representative Healy is selling herself short. She just passed a very wonderful piece of legislation today in the House that will allow nurses a little bit of relief. It's also going to be helping the veterans and the veterans' homes. So kudos to her for that. That's going to be a good bill. So there's a couple. So you know. This is not like a solo sport, right? It's a team sport. You can't get anything done by yourself. Not one thing. You got to work together. And I think when we all work together, both Senate and the House, we come up with the best solution and the best ideas for the betterment of Idaho. And that's what makes us. That's what makes this thing we do so special and such an honor. So just a couple of things that I want to highlight. Well, I'll just highlight one. So parent rights. Okay, so it's House Bill 163. That's one of the best bills I ever voted for. It gives rights back to the parents, and I can't go through it all, but it does just that. It gives more rights back to the parents. So I'm pretty proud of that one that we all came up with that. Also. This thing with China is real. So TikTok, other things, that's real. This thing right here has a listening device that I don't want to sound like a conspiracy guy, but it's a real thing. So all that's true that Representative Hill has been talking about. I'm an Air Force veteran as well, and what he says is true. So. Oh, and thank you for allowing us to be here tonight, and thank you for allowing me to serve. It's an honor.
Representative Pensky?
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. Thanks to all of you who showed up and wanted to listen to a bunch of boring politicians on your Friday evening. We all appreciate that, and we appreciate the feedback from you. Two things that I'm working on that I'm most excited about. The first one, the first bill that I worked on this session was a bill to make financial literacy a requirement in high schools. Basically what that's going to do is make sure that every kid who graduates from an Idaho high school understands the basics of personal finance. It's something that should have been done a long time ago. I was super fortunate to get to take an elective class back in the day. It helped me tremendously in real life, and now we're making that a requirement for every high school student. I worked on that piece of legislation with Superintendent Critchfield. It's a huge win for the state. It's currently on the Senate third reading calendar, and hopefully will be law soon. Then the other priority that I have is the budget. I sit on the Appropriations Committee. We all know that the state's got about $1.5 billion surplus right now that we are trying to figure out what to do with. The governor made his recommendation. It includes a lot of one-time investments, and that's going to be the kind of the big final push at the end here, is to make sure that we use these one-time dollars that we have as really good one-time investments. It's another way to get property tax relief, is to take some of the burden away, like was talked about, from the locals investing one time in big transportation things. You know, the couple $100 million that is going towards bridges. In total, I believe it was $650 million of that $1.5 billion surplus is going to be put towards one-time transportation projects. So I'm spending a lot of my time and energy there right now.
Representative Ellers, and I know we still have the last four, but you guys have talked a lot tonight, so let's try to wrap it up since it's already 7:31.
Thank you. I guess that's it. Thanks for being here.
Well,
No, I'll close up.
Yeah,
I'll
do
close
quick
up.
bills.
So.
Good bill numbers if you.
Okay, well, one, I just want to clarify something with the grocery tax, going back to that issue. I know I came at it from the other way. In general, I am for tax relief. So show me what gives us tax relief, and that is what I am for. And so also to demonstrate that, first of all, I fully support what Representative Monks is working on, and this, like he said, is going to be the largest property tax relief in the history of Idaho. I'm also working on something that's not in bill form yet. It might be, this is just a little teaser idea, on a path to provide even further property tax relief, but that'll likely be next session. So stay tuned on that one.
Thank you. Senator Byrd?
Thank you. Thank you, Valerie. You know, those who know Valerie, she's the one that puts this thing together and keeps us online, and we couldn't do what we do without Valerie. So thank you so much, and thank you to Louisa for being the moderator. So thank you as well. Thank you all for being here tonight on Friday night. I've worked on a couple of bills, co-sponsored a couple post-election audit bills. I'm also working on a small business tax bill that would affect small business down in downtown Meridian here in Meridian, some business up north and business in Boise. It's going to be I know that the small business owner is super excited for it. Anytime I can lower taxes and help the small business owner out, I'm first in line to do it. My big bill is an election bill. I've been working on it for 2 or 3 months. It's currently in LSO, keeps on going back and forth. I'm running out of time. I think it's probably going to be next session, but when you guys see it, you're going to love it.
Thank you. Representative Monks?
Keep it short. Thank you, appreciate all that. 2 other bills that I'm working on that have already passed the House and gone through Senate committee to their floor there. Preventing state dollars being used for donations and sponsorships to private organizations. The other one is prohibition on vaccine passports.
Representative Vanderwater?
I think we've been reprimanded that we're already talking too much. As chairman of Health and Welfare, I'm trying to get my arms around Medicaid, fighting every step of the way, getting different information. One of the bills that I've introduced and not sure I can even get out of my committee is to go to managed care, House Bill 200, to go to managed care on Medicaid, which 40 states are already doing. It's proven that it'll keep the increases in Medicaid from overrunning our budget. And so, and beyond that, it's just, you know, I'm waiting for all of our good health and welfare members to submit really good bills that I can run with.
Thank you. And lastly, Senator Den Hartog.
Lastly, I haven't gotten to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is education. I think it was Monday of this week. The Senate had a bill on the floor for universal education savings accounts to promote more parental choice and freedom and movement of where they're sending their kids to school and to have some funds follow students. That bill went down in a pretty big way on the Senate floor. I've been working with Representative Wendy Horman. She and I are working on what we would term a backup plan to that. Stay tuned for a print hearing in a Senate committee on Monday morning.
Well, thank you all for coming. Thank you for your time. We know you guys are very busy. I believe the district chairmen have intentions of making this, having a couple other town halls after this. But I'm going to pass it on to Val.
There you go. Thank you. All right, we're at the end of our town hall, so I just wanted to close with a thank you to the audience.